Pledge of Allegiance. Today we have a guest, but you know,
I don't think he's listening to us.
You won't need to turn your microphones up with Justice. We'll all hear him clearly.
Dad, we're talking about Justice doing the pledge. Not today.
What was that?
we're saying that one of these weeks we'd like to have Justice do our Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Oh yeah, I think he would like that.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe if he's around next week, could we get him on the schedule?
Yeah. We could do some. I could see. I'll check his calendar.
He's booked for weeks.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to just take a quick second to pin the crew. Makes watching for hands a lot easier. I'll see. All right. Well, it looks like we have a full house here, so I will call the meeting of the St. Paul City Council to order. I guess I should have said, Sherry, are we recording or do we not do that anymore?
I just started it now. It should pop up in a second here.
Okay. So there we go. All right. Okay. So I'm calling the meeting of the St. Paul City Council to order. Roll call.
Naker.
Here.
Prince. She's trying to unmute.
I lost my screen.
Here. Okay. Tao.
Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Council President Brenmon.
Here.
7 present, no one absent.
We have a guest today, so please stand and join Deputy Chief Stacey Murphy as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Consent agenda items 3 through 18 are before you for your consideration.
And is there anything that should be taken for a separate consideration? All right, seeing none, Ms. Prince moves consent agenda. Roll call.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Okay, I'm hearing myself. Item number 19, presentation regarding preparations in case of future unrest.
Okay, and before we shift to this item, I'll just share, I think last week it was Ward 3 that noted that there was a presentation at BOMA regarding preparations for future unrest in the city and suggested that would be a appropriate presentation to have here at the City Council. And we do have an item upcoming on our agenda talking about changes to our parades and assemblies and gatherings. And I just want to separate those two items. We're really talking about just preparations for in case of future unrest, and then we will get to the parade ordinance later. But just kind of as we've been mentioning, using our council meetings as an opportunity to share with the public information that is of relevance to them in in kind of in real time, and also a reference that we can go back to and share out on our social media platforms as well. So this works. We've invited quite a few people in lately, and I think that it's been a great way to share information. So I'm going to turn things over to Deputy Chief Stacy Murphy to share about the preparations in case of future unrest. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you. I have a PowerPoint that I think will help as we move through the presentation. So are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So thank you very much for having me. This presentation, like Council President Bren Moen had just mentioned, is very specifically tailored to the business community. So we are going to address a variety of different things, but again, this really is addressed towards the business community. We had some very specific questions that we were asked related to the upcoming trials and potential civil unrest. So that's what I'm going to be speaking to today. So some of the topics that I'm going to be hitting on are the timelines and upcoming events as it relates to trial over in Minneapolis, the planning and preparations that we've already done thus far leading up to the trial, how folks can protect their businesses here in St. Paul, and then what they can do to actually partner with the St. Paul Police Department. So kind of the timeline and upcoming events. So we know that the trial for Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer, starts on March 8th. That is the start of jury selection. We're not sure exactly how long jury selection is going to take. So our planning, as we've been planning for the different stages of this, have been event-based. So that's what you're seeing here, because we don't have dates necessarily go along with these different events. So jury select, again, we know starts March 8th. Following that will be the trial itself. Again, we're just entirely sure on how long that's going to take to get through the trial. Then there will be deliberations and the verdict. So as we go through this, we have different layers of preparation that we've got in place for the police department. And we also have contingency plans depending on what may or may not be going on here in the metro area. Because the one thing that we do expect is that this trial is going to draw people from across the country, possibly and around the world. This is something that when the incident itself happened, did go worldwide. So we're really preparing for an event that is going to really be the focal point in the metro, specifically Minneapolis, but obviously we're the neighbors right across the river, so we want to make sure that we're prepared. There could be protests, marches, demonstrations, the majority of which we are obviously very hopeful that they're going to remain peaceful, but we're planning for anything that may become not peaceful. So the primary focus of the police department is really to protect people, protect property, and protect free speech. So again, we really encourage people and want to have a space for folks to be able to utilize their First Amendment rights, to be able to have speech, to protest, to demonstrate. But we are also going to be doing some messaging and be very clear about the fact that violent behavior, dangerous behavior, destructive type behavior will not be tolerated. We really want to get out ahead of that messaging because we really do believe that the majority of folks want to come and be peaceful. And we want to make sure that folks understand that that's what we want as well. But if there is any type of behavior that goes beyond what is peaceful, we are prepared to deal with that, and that will not be tolerated. And that's something that we've really worked with a lot of our mutual aid partners, Minneapolis, with all the folks that this affects in law enforcement, to make sure that we're all on the same page. We really are going to be giving out a unified message as we get closer here to the trials. So some of the planning preparations, again, just a continuation of what I've been talking about. So we have staffing models here in the city of St. Paul that we have put together for our sworn law enforcement, really focused on a couple of things. One, making sure first and foremost, that can handle the 911 calls that come in. We know that there is a need in the city, and we still want to make sure that we can respond to any calls for service that come. So our staffing model really makes sure that we can continue to provide that service. And we also have those contingency plans and those plans in place for any civil unrest that may happen. We're just prepared for that should it happen. We have a plan in place to mobilize our mobile field force contingent. So that is a very specialized group of individuals who can deal with and manage any large scale demonstrations, civil unrest, that type of behavior. So we've been doing training with those folks, and they will be working and ready to go when the trials start. We've also been doing a great deal of training. So I know we were at the City Council previously to discuss the training we've been doing over at the Sears building. This is the last week of that training. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us and allow us to do that training. It's been hugely beneficial. We've had close to 1,000 folks that have gone through that training between St. Paul Police, Fire, and then our mutual aid partners. So it's really helped us to work very well together, the co-responder between the police and fire and how we can help each other, and really having that common technology and be able to work well with our mutual aid partners has been very beneficial. And then the communication efforts. So our police department here has, in conjunction with the mayor's office, has started some communications, reaching out to both folks within the city and also with our local groups that we know and have good working relationships with, who have done demonstrations in the past. We have plans in place that we're going to be reaching out to them to see what it is that the police department can perhaps offer, make sure that we have that open line of communication. So if there is some way that we can assist our local folks, we really want to make sure that we're doing that. So we have those communication plans in place, and that's nothing different than what we normally do. I mean, we're in very close contact with the individuals that have demonstrations on a regular basis here in the city, and we have a very good working relationship with the majority of those folks. We really are just continuing what's already in place. We are also going to be working towards affecting some of the critical infrastructure. So a lot of this comes into place is with our assistance we're going to be getting from the National Guard. Some of those critical buildings like hospital, government buildings, our law enforcement buildings, you will in the near future here be seeing some fencing. I know if you've been by our headquarters building, you've seen the fencing that we have up around here. We're going to be doing very similar configurations around both our east and western district. And a really big reason for that is to actually allow us to utilize fewer officers in order to make sure that our facilities can remain secure and remain safe, and have them out answering those 911 calls and doing other responses that we need them to do. So I'm not sure how familiar you are, but we have had some planning preparations that have been going on for a number of months. So here in the East Metro, our group is led by St. Paul PD. We're working very closely with Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, Washington County, Dakota County, Minnesota State Patrol, the St. Paul Fire Department, St. Paul Emergency Management, and National Guard. We have had a group that's been working together every other week to do all the preparations that I've been talking about so far. Those are the mutual aid partners that we're going to be working with very closely in the upcoming trial. Again, those are the folks that we worked with at the training we've been doing out at the Sears building. So we've really been doing a lot of collaborative work around the preparations for this upcoming trial. And along the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see reference to Operation Safety Net. So that is a parallel planning process that's been going on in the West Metro that's really been led by Minneapolis Police Department and Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. So although they're two separate planning groups, we are staying in very close contact with one another to make sure that we understand what each group is doing, and making sure that we have the ability to help each other out should we need to do that. There is also going to be an effort for a unified command. So that's going to be the ability for all of us, so the East and West Metro groups to be able to work jointly together while still maintaining our individual planning processes that we've been doing along the way, because we just simply do things differently, and we have been planning slightly differently, but we have robust plans in place for the coming trials. So now I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics about what folks can do for their businesses to really help protect their businesses for any civil unrest that may happen. And again, this is in response to specific questions that we've received from some of our local businesses after what we saw back in May. So over on the side, you'll see a flyer that we've put together and has been sent out. We're working on getting that distributed. So that has gone out through the Chamber of Commerce here in the city, as well as we're distributing it through our districts. So each of the district seniors has their own different business groups that, whether it's BOMA or all the different groups that we have throughout the city, they're working on getting that distributed as well. So it's just kind of a little cheat sheet, if you will, for some options that folks can look at, just kind of some ideas of things that they can do to kind of help and prepare and really to stay safe with their businesses. So some of the things that we're asking folks to do is really to be proactive. So make sure they create, or if they don't, if they already have something in place, to update any emergency and security plans that they have for their business. So that really starts by, thinking ahead, how can I best protect my business, my employees, my folks that are here shopping? How can I best protect them? And we've also offered resources that I will get to at the end of the presentation of ways that the police department can help folks with creating those plans, because sometimes people just don't really know where to start. And we have a crime prevention unit that is able to assist if folks need some of that help building those plans. The other things that we're asking folks to do is to just kind of look at, their security measures. What do they currently have in place, and what things may or may not be helpful for them? Everyone's different, but look at things like lighting, both interior and exterior, security systems, possibly to include a camera system, looking at windows and doors. Are there options to perhaps, do some type of lamination to make it more difficult to break those windows and doors, particularly when they're glass? Possibilities of boarding up windows and doors, should that be something that they need to do. And also removing any loose items such as, rocks, different things that could be used to break glass and that type of a thing. The other thing, we're really making sure that we...
Deputy Chief, if I could just quick interrupt you. It looks like Mr. Tao has a question.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Council President. I was just curious, will there be, to protect these businesses, will there be curfew during that time? And then
that's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's one question. And the other one is, are you all following known actors that has previously damaged properties in Minneapolis and St. Paul, or has incite violence and other protests, whether in the Twin City or across the country?
Thank you, Councilmember Tao. So I'll address the curfew question first. So what I can tell you is we do not have any plans to have a preemptive curfew, shall I say. We're not just going to automatically have a curfew in place, but we do have plans, also working with Minneapolis to make sure we're, doing, if it makes sense, if we're able to, a metro-wide curfew, because it seems to be more effective that way. But should we need to, we have everything in place to be able to do that in a very quick turnaround. And we also have messaging in place. We can get that out to folks so people are aware of what's going on should we find the need to have a curfew. But again, we don't have any plans in place to just preemptively have a curfew. But it is definitely our toolbox of things that we can do if we need to. But it's really going to be based on behavior that we're seeing, the intelligence that we're receiving, really what is going on. And then the second part of your question, so what I can tell you is we have, again, Metro-wide, robust intelligence. Oh, is there a question? Can you hear me?
Mr. Tao, did you have a follow-up on the first part or no? No, it looked like the mute button was just off. Deputy Chief, you can continue to answer.
Okay, so the second part of the question, we have a robust intelligence group that is going to be working throughout the trial, starting, well, there's actually been some work around the intelligence already, but we're really working to make sure that we have a handle on what is going on locally and also across the country, because that really does potentially play into what could happen here. So we do have all of those intelligence gathering individuals, not just with State Police Department here, but across the Metro, to really make sure that we're on, that we understand what's going on and we're getting information as quickly and possibly as quickly as we possibly can in order to make decisions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to go back really quickly to the part where I was talking about folks boarding up their businesses. So one thing that we really want to make sure that we touch on is we're really encouraging businesses to proactively reach out to their insurance companies. One thing that we had never actually considered being an issue that we've heard very loud and clear from some of our local businesses is there was individual or businesses who boarded up windows and doors during the civil unrest in May, and now having difficulties with their insurance companies, actually with the claims from windows that were damaged. So what they're being told is the insurance companies are saying things like, well, how do we know that you didn't damage these windows or doors prior to boarding them up, and that the damage actually came from the civil unrest. So what we're doing is we're really encouraging folks, make sure you're reaching out to your insurance companies ahead of time and having those conversations so you know what you can do to make sure that as best as you can that there is coverage for any damage, even if you decide that boarding your business is a good way to go. So it's something that I was making sure that we're mentioning to folks because it's something that we hadn't heard of before, but we had definitely been hearing some of our businesses telling us that exact thing that they're dealing with right now. So we just want to make sure that we're proactive about getting that message out to folks. So then one of the other things that we're asking people to do is really to stay vigilant. So during this trial period, there's just a lot of unknowns, right? Don't know what's going to be happening, but we do know that the spotlight is going to be on the Metro area here because this is where the trial is going to be happening. So we're asking folks that if they see any suspicious or criminal behavior to make sure that they're reporting that. Make sure that they're taking notes of things like suspects or vehicle descriptions. A specific thing to pay attention to is if folks are seeing suspicious vehicles that don't have license plates. That's something we really saw back in May, is some of those folks that were coming from out of the state to really cause damage and do criminal behavior here in the Metro area were in vehicles that didn't have license plates. It just was a theme that we were seeing. So it's something that we're asking folks just to pay attention to have that ability to share evidence with us if there is a crime at their business. So things like video, like do you know how to use your video? Are you willing to give us access to that? How does that work? Because every business is different, and we just want to make sure that folks think of that ahead of time so they're not trying to make decisions, in that moment. Also, watch out for your neighboring business. Maybe you're open, but your neighboring business is closed. So just make sure that we're watching out for each other. We really want to make this a collaborative response, and as much as we can watch out for each other, that just makes it so much easier. We have that many more eyes out there working to protect our businesses.
Deputy Chief, it looks like Councilmember Jalali has a question.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm appreciating this information. I wanted to ask a clarifying question. I have been at community engagement events with SPPD in multiple venues before where SPPD's message to the community is to report suspicious behavior, and there isn't a adequate definition given of what that actually means. And then what happens is community members call in any and all types of things, which not only creates a strain on our channels and responses in an already strained environment, but also really opens residents up to racial bias and discrimination and prejudice, and just the coded racist historical definitions of who is seen as quote unquote suspicious. So I guess my clarifying question would be, in the context of business owners working to rightfully stay vigilant and keeping track of each other during possible unrest, what types of behaviors do you suggest folks report, not just people being around outside, often people of color being outside who then get reported as suspicious? I would appreciate a clarification on what is actually deemed suspicious.
So that is a great question. Thank you, Councilmember Jalali. So what I can tell you is we have seen very specific behaviors under back in May. So it'd be things like someone walking down the street, perhaps wearing a gas mask, or carrying a gas can. Things that just seem outside of the normal for that activity in that neighborhood. Folks that are perhaps, walking around with bats or things that can cause damage to businesses. Suspicious behavior, obviously it looks a little bit different to each and every person, but it really is, as it relates to businesses, things that can cause damage. So stuff related to fire, like I said, gas cans, baseball bats, gas masks is a big one. We've seen folks just walking around with gas masks, carrying multiple jugs of milk. That's another one that we saw. So really those very specific things that make you kind of have that sixth sense of there's something that's just not right there. Is that helpful?
I appreciate that. And I would just say one flag that many protesters who are not actually engaged in violence carry milk as a treatment for tear gas that police use. So I would caution against that automatically being something used for danger versus defense or response to police response. But everything else that you're naming is a little bit more clarification. It's obviously based on individual business owners' judgment. I would just caution our community to not replicate false and discriminatory surveillance bias as we work to keep one another safe. It is a good practice to keep an eye out, but I've also seen it go the wrong way. So I appreciate the chance to get some clarification and weigh in on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Deputy Chief, it looks like Councilmember Prince also has a question or a comment.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief. My question is, I appreciate that you've provided this presentation for the Chamber and for BOMA, and I wondered about our other business associations. The East Side Area Business Association is holding 3 meetings over, well, one was Monday and the next 2 Mondays to provide information and support to businesses as they prepare for this. And I wondered if this presentation is being made available to our other business associations in St. Paul.
Yes, great question, Councilman Prince. So we actually have a number of different community meetings coming up, and the East Side Business Council is one of the East Side Business Association, I apologize, is one of them. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's, I'm sorry, I don't remember the date off the top of my head of when we're going to be given the presentation, but all 3 of our districts are working with their local business associations, whether, BOMA, East Side Business Association, there's a wide variety of them, to make sure that should they want this, that they're getting this presentation. And we also just this morning put the upcoming meetings that we know of on our police department website.
Oh,
so that is one of the other areas I would like to point people to so that they will see the ones that are already scheduled. But we know that there will likely be additional meetings scheduled as we get the word out to more and more associations, so that we're hoping to get to as many folks as would like to have the information.
Thank you. And then one other question I have is the one pertaining to vehicles without license plates. Because I recall that last year when this was happening, that people were asked to be on the lookout for vehicles without license plates. And then we really got inundated with calls from people reporting vehicles without license plates. So I'm wondering if there is any kind of a plan for how to get that information that maybe doesn't tie up 911 or other ways that people might feel that they should use to report vehicles without license plates.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilmember Prince. So what we was pretty much like any other call that comes into our dispatch, whether it's emergency or non-emergency line, is we try to vet that information. So one of the things that we will do is figure out, kind of the area it is. Is it a place that we're seeing, an increase in already violent behavior or destructive behavior, things like that? Those would obviously take a higher priority for us. But we would do our best to do a follow-up on all of the calls that we're getting to the best of our ability, right? I mean, we may not be able to get to all of them in a timely manner. But that was a theme that we saw back in May. So it's really something that we want to put out there to folks because it was very beneficial for us. I mean, we were able to get to some folks and that really helped us with a wide variety of different intelligence gathering that we did. It just really was a theme that we were seeing, and it wasn't folks locally here in the city. It really was those people that were coming from other states that were coming here with the specific intent and specific purpose to do damage here in our city and across the metro. So it just seemed to be a theme then, and we're just thinking that it may be a theme again. So we're just kind of putting it out there for folks to keep an eye out for it. But you're right, with anything, we do have to vet the information coming in to the best of our ability, because if we do get inundated, it is difficult for us to get to all of them. So we just try to manage that as best as we can.
Thank you for that information.
Welcome. Were there any other questions? Okay.
Looks like Ms. Naker has a question.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you. And Deputy Chief, if you want to finish your presentation, I can also wait till the end. So I put my hand up because you asked, but I can also wait.
Okay. Sorry, it's just hard. I can't see the screen with all of you guys on it, so I wasn't sure. I'm almost done, so I will finish and then I will come right back. Perfect. So one of the last things that we're asking folks to do is really to partner with us. So again, I mentioned this a little bit. We have a prevention unit. So they have a lot of information, very valuable information for businesses. So they're willing to go out to businesses and to help kind of build some of their security plans, and the different things that I talked about really help to kind of work with them to figure out what is the right fit for their business, because each business is very different. We're also asking folks to really watch our social media platforms with the St. Paul Police Department and the city. We're going to be putting out information via both Twitter and Facebook as real time as we can throughout the trial. If we're seeing things going on that we really want folks to be aware of, those are going to be the locations that will be your quick and your best way to get that information relatively quickly. Also with the West Metro, I just want to throw that there, that Operation Safety Net, again, that's Minneapolis. They're going to be doing very similar social media information. So just throwing that out there if folks are interested in that. And then again, like I had just mentioned after Council President Prince's question, we are having a variety of future community meetings speaking about this topic exactly, businesses. And we've listed that information on our police department's city website, as well as we're messaging that out through the various business associations throughout the city. And if there are folks that would like this information, we definitely want to make sure that we're getting that out to everybody. We are also working on that one-page flyer that I had showed you earlier in the presentation. We are working on getting some short videos created to help explain that in a variety of different languages. So it's not just available in English. We're working on that right now and hope that will be available starting next week. And really, we just want to make sure folks know that we are here to help. with their businesses. We want to help keep them safe, and we really want to help them with any planning they have or any questions that they have. So that really is the purpose of this presentation. And so that's really what I have. If there are any other questions, I am open to hearing them.
Great. Well, we know Ms. Naker has a question, so let's go to Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. Thanks again, Deputy Chief. This is really great to have this information be shared publicly. I have two questions that have come to me from constituents primarily, and they both sort of relate to how people are going to experience these protests, people who may or may not be part of them. One is just about people's mental and emotional health. A lot of people are probably going to have some anxiety triggered, some trauma reawakened from the images of last summer. If we have white supremacists protesting in the streets again, just a lot of that that was really painful for people is probably going to be triggered again. And so the question was about how we're prepared to respond to people's mental needs and emotional needs as well. And I know we have a mental health unit with the police department, and so I'm wondering if they have special plans or if there will be information about that shared. That's one question. And then the second one is just a number of my constituents, especially recently when there have been those kinds of very aggressive protests with guns being waved around, making people feel extremely unsafe. Obviously, people have First Amendment rights, but people also have a right to feel safe in their neighborhoods. And so I'm wondering if there's information that can be made available on the balance between those two things and sort of a know your rights information set for residents and for people who just may be observing these, so that they know what is okay and when it's not okay, and when they can call for help during these sorts of events.
Perfect. Thank you, Councilmember Naker. So I will address the question about the guns first. So that is not something that I'm aware of that we have currently, but that is certainly something that I can work with the city attorney's office and the police department to help draft something that really we can put out to individuals. That does sound like something that would be very helpful. So that's on my to-do list. So I will have to get back to you on that because I don't believe that's something that we have currently. And then the other question, so I am actually, that is something that we have thought about, is what kind of emotions this may bring back up for, now that the trial is starting, bring back up for folks within the community. So actually the city of St. Paul and the police department, I am actually the person who is sitting on the committee who is working on this. So the city of St. Paul and Ramsey County are working together to come up with some healing spaces. I'm not sure if that will end up being what they're exactly called, but that's kind of what we're looking at right now. The planning process has just started. We've only had a couple of meetings, so I don't know the exact locations or exactly what they're going to look like, but we're doing a lot of work with community partners and really trying to figure out what that can look like. So though I don't have a great answer to your question, I can tell you it is something we're thinking about, and it is something that we're working on, because we really do want to make sure that we're aware of that and cognizant of that, and the fact that it will trigger emotions for folks. We want to make sure people have a space they can feel safe, that they can go to really talk about those feelings and work through that. So there are plans in the works, but I don't have a final plan that I can offer for you today.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It looks like Mr. Tao and then Ms. Yang have questions. And I think before we go to that, I think you could stop sharing your screen and, or if it's possible, maybe you should stop sharing the screen and get a different view here.
I think I just stopped sharing my screen. Does that look better?
Yep, here we are.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Thank you, Council President. I'm just curious about what type of level of service will be provided to a small business from the department. I remember during the last civil unrest, I was over at Target, and there was quite a few the police officer there protecting Target. And then just across the street down the road on University, there was virtually no police officer. And so how are we prioritizing small businesses compared to last time?
So that's a very good question. So we did learn some lessons for sure from what we experienced back in May. So we have a more robust plan this time around, and I won't get into too many of the details of it, but what I can tell you is with the additional staffing we'll have in the city between our mutual aid partners and National Guard, we are going to do, for lack of a better word, I guess, some roaming patrols and some more static posts in very specific areas that have businesses. So whether that's Grand Avenue, University Avenue, all of Payne Avenue, all of the different areas throughout the city that have businesses, we have charted that out so we know where all of those are, because obviously our partners are going to be in the city helping us, may not be aware of where all those are, and we're going to have folks that are really making those patrols and making sure that we're doing a better job and a more robust job of really watching the entire city, and we'll have the ability to do that with the additional staff. Obviously, it's also going to be dependent on what's going on in the city. So if there is a particular issue like we saw out on University Avenue that requires additional staff, so we may not have the ability at that point to be able to have all of these other patrols going on to the same extent that we would if it wasn't something larger that we had to respond to in the moment. But we do have those plans in place. I have certainly thought about that. And that's something we're working to make sure that we do a better job of.
Thank you.
Ms. Yang.
Thanks, Council President. Deputy Chief, I have a few questions here. The first one, I heard you mention in the presentation that we're going to get fencing, maybe you even mentioned barricades around the district stations and a few other governmental facilities as well. I was wondering if you could share, like, how long do you plan to keep them up? And then also, what is the cost of it as well? Because the barricades that are around our district stations now have been up there since the civil unrest last year. And when I asked about cost, like all of it collectively, it was like maybe close to $200,000 already, and they're still up there now. So I imagine that cost will only continue to increase. And I still haven't heard a plan on when they'll be taken down. They'll still be there, from what it sounds like, and I don't know how long. And also a question that I haven't gotten answered at all to date is where money is coming from to pay for that expense. And then the second thing here is, in your presentation, I don't feel like I heard anything about collaboration with people who are, out in community already working with folks, out in the community. So I'm talking about like nonprofits or even organizations that do very people-centered work. For many of them, they have always talked about wanting to work closely together to actually not just like build trust, with the police department, but to actually be more integrated into what is happening and to be a part of the solution as well. And I didn't hear a plan for that. So I was wondering if you could talk about whether you all have been having conversations with those community organizations or even nonprofits and including them in part of your plan to respond to civil unrest.
Thank you, Councilmember Councilmember Yang. So I'll start with the barricades and the fencing. So I am not in a position where I can speak to the cost. I just don't have that in front of me. So I apologize. I won't be able to answer that. As far as the timing, so we're going to start within the next week or two, putting the barricades up around the East and West District. You're right, some of the barricades are still up, but some of the fencing did go down. So that's what we're working on putting back up. And the timing of it, as far as how long it's going to remain in place, that's something we're still trying to work out. So I don't know. Part of it is, like you were mentioning, cost. So it's going to depend if there's a second trial that's going to be coming and timing of that. Once we get through the first trial, what makes the most sense? Does it make sense to leave it up through the second trial? Does it make sense to take down? I mean, those are questions that are a bit open-ended right now that I just don't have a firm answer for you. But our plan is, and our desire is to be able to take them down as soon as we're able to, as soon as we feel like it makes sense to do so. For the reasoning that the Jersey barrier, which are those kind of cement barriers that we currently have in place at both of the districts, part of the reason they were kept in place is those are very difficult to find. Some of them we did have for free through MnDOT, so we're not paying for those. And a lot of these materials that we're trying to get to put these fences are difficult to get. And it really does help us with the ability to be able to protect our businesses and the ability to be able to have officers out doing other tasks. As far as the money to pay for those, I'm not sure on what the exact budget code of where that's coming from, but we do not have a third-party budget as of right now to pay for that. So it's coming from the city as far as I'm aware. And I believe those were your questions about the barricades and the fencing. Then you were talking about working with the community organizations. And I guess my question is, are you talking about specifically related to businesses and what our plans are as far as businesses and community organizations? Because we are having those conversations with the different business associations like BOMA, all of the different community business organizations within the city to kind of figure out how we can partner with them. And that's really where this presentation came from, was the ask from them as far as what it is that we can do. So we are having the conversations.
Okay, thank you. To follow up for the things for the information that you didn't have about barricades and fencing, can you get back to us about it? I personally be really interested in getting that answered. And then you asked about like the community groups. You're right. This was for business associations. So the groups I'm thinking of are, I'd say like more so the groups that do like violence prevention work, or, you know, even like the groups that have applied for the funding that the council is going to be deliberating today, like the Community First Public Safety Grants, like a lot of them are the groups that are out in the streets. So whenever we do have any sort of like demonstration or protest or civil unrest, and they're out there doing de-escalation out there in community. And so I feel like they also could play a huge critical role in figuring out how we also respond to more civil unrest in our community as well.
So we are speaking with, I'm thinking of like the ambassadors, Healing Street, some of those folks. We are working with them and talking to them and figuring out, you know, what role do they play? How can we work with each other during any potential civil unrest? Noel Nix with the mayor's office is also another very good resource for us. Him and I have been in collaboration and will continue to do so of, you know, what do some of those community partners look like and how can they be helpful? So those conversations are being had. I just don't have specifics in front of me for like particular groups and any plans that we have in place, but we are having some of those conversations. If there are groups that you think, you know, maybe we aren't reaching out to that could be helpful, I would certainly be open to, you know, hearing who those people may be, because we definitely want to partner with as many people as we can to make sure that we have a very collaborative approach.
That sounds great. Thank you. Can you get back to me about the information as well?
Absolutely, I will.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Mr. Tolbert?
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. I also appreciate how much proactive outreach the department's doing to so many in our community on this. Just to maybe highlight a few things that I think is important. One, for people to follow the communications via the Facebook pages and the Twitter page. I know we will pass a lot of that information on too. The other thing I think is important to highlight here is, and I know many in the department say this too, and people were doing the best they could at the time. There felt like there was a vacuum in policing because there were so many resources being put towards the unrest that was adjacent to the protests going on last time around. And I know that's admitted to, and you know, it's not a criticism, it's just what people felt. And I think the important thing to note in that I've heard from so many, from the police department, from the chief to senior commanders to what we heard here today, is that policing will be happening. We'll just be ready for any unrest that happens or violence that happens that potentially could happen. And I think that's the important thing for people to know is we will be doing two things at once, and that's just the ability to plan for this and good communication and being on the ready. And I know the department does a really good job of planning for this, and I think we'll do a great job of balancing people's First Amendment rights to protest, and as well as keeping the community and protesters safe. So thank you for that, and any updates that you have that we can pass out to our constituents or to businesses or anyone, I think is important. So I appreciate the proactive approach that the department's taken on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Tolbert.
I'm just looking to see if any of my colleagues have anything else to add, and if not, I'll just quick wrap up and we will shift gears here. But I do not see anybody. So I think that we all around this table, and I know across the city, we agreed and fully support people peacefully and passionately protesting for causes. And I think you said this here today, and we've seen over time that anarchists and opportunists definitely ride the coattails of protesters. We saw this in January 6th. We saw it here in the Twin Cities, and it happens, and they tend to be catalytic for problems. And I feel like we're much more aware now than we were a year ago today. I am sure that our community members will appreciate knowing this, getting this information, knowing that this preparation is underway. And I want to thank you for this presentation today, but also the efforts that you outlined to us to get this out to our broader St. Paul community through business associations, and the information you had about your crime prevention specialist helping businesses is also available to people, individuals and residences. So I think that's great. And also finally, just knowing that these trials are like a known series of events that we are expecting to create a reaction. It makes sense to me that we're planning and preparing around them, but I also feel like this preparation will be useful, going on into the future for any other large gatherings or protests, and having a better understanding of how to manage large crowds so that we can facilitate peaceful protests and keep limit the amount of violence and damage that happens, and even, and God forbid, if there's a natural disaster. I think that the silver lining of this is that we are much more prepared than we have been in the past. And I think at the end of the day, planning saves us money, saves us trauma. And so I really do appreciate what the police is doing, and I really appreciate my colleagues' questions. I think that we like to be part of the planning and preparation, and so hopefully this was helpful for you as well, Deputy Chief, just understanding kind of where we're coming from, and we just really appreciate all this effort and information. So thank you so much.
Certainly was helpful, and thank you, Council President Brenmoen, for having me. And if there's any other questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Item number 20, Resolution 21-257, approving the mayor's appointment of Roxanne Draw and Walter Battle to a 4-year term on the Neighborhood Star Board. This item was laid over from last week.
Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. I'm requesting another 1-week layover to further explore this.
Okay, Mr. Tao has requested a 1-week layover. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker?
Aye.
Prince?
Aye.
Tao? You're on mute, Mr. Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert?
Yes.
Yang?
Aye.
Jalali?
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen?
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to March 3rd. Item number 21 is the final adoption of Ordinance 21-7, amending and replacing Ordinance 10-779 and authorizing the issuance of general obligation library refunding bonds of the Public Library Agency in order to achieve debt service savings.
All right, this is final adoption, as Ms. Moore said, and Ms. Prince would move this ordinance. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item number 22 is second reading of ordinance 21-4, amending the zoning code as recommended in the definition of family zoning study. This ordinance is laid over to March 4th for third reading public hearing. March 3rd, sorry. I thought I had that wrong. Item number 23 is second reading of ordinance 21-6, amending chapter 366A of the legislative code entitled Parades, Races, and Public Assemblies to prohibit the procession of certain items at such events.
And Ms. Moore, before you move on, I'm going to just quick call on Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President. I wanted to thank everyone. We've gotten a lot of feedback on this proposed amendment, and while the intent of it is actually very closely aligned with what we just talked about with the Deputy Chief to make sure that protests are peaceful and that our officers are able to keep the peace effectively. I know many of us heard from some of our festival and parade and event organizers that this could also hamper their ability to provide those key vibrant events in our neighborhoods that we all love and cherish. And so our city attorney's office, I know, has worked closely with some of those folks who did send in their feedback. And there's a amended version that we'll be putting in as version 2 for next week. Try to get that in tomorrow so people have time to look at it before the public hearing. But just wanted to say that that will be in, and I think it incorporates most of the feedback that we received.
Great, thank you. And this is, again, part of our new approach to ordinances, where we will be moving towards a system where we have our public hearing at a different time in this process. So Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I know we're just in the second reading. We've yet to get to a public hearing, and our office is receiving a lot of concerns about this ordinance. So as we talk about amending it, I just want to make sure we're playing back the tape. And toward that end, I wanted to ask the city attorney. Earlier, I asked on email when it was discussed that an amendment will be brought forward to resolve potential First Amendment and legal concerns, that we would be simply amending one paragraph as it stands to be deleted out to make for more fair enforcement. And I wanted to just reconfirm, is that what the amendment is now? Sometimes things change up to the last minute, and I think it would be good to get a clear playback of what is happening to the text in plain terms, just because if it's an amendment to basically improve the legality of the ordinance, I would probably support that, but I don't actually support this ordinance overall, if that makes sense. And I just appreciate the clarification so that I can vote accordingly.
And I think that there is no amendment at this time. There'll be one coming that we didn't have time to get it into the system before the meeting today. So there will be something entered in Legistar later today or tomorrow, so that folks have an opportunity to look at it before next week's public hearing. So you should have time to look at that. I think we got a version from the city attorney's office, but it just was too short of notice for folks to have a chance to look it over.
All right, I appreciate that clarification because was getting updates today on email and wanted to make sure about what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, for some reason, there's a lot going on today. Okay, great. So we should see that version 2 in Legistar, and then we will vote on it next week if we so choose. Okay, okay, Ms. Moore.
Okay, so that item is laid over to March 3rd for third reading public hearing. Item 24, second reading of ordinance 21-8, granting the application of 2069 Marshall Avenue LLC to rezone property at 2069 Marshall Avenue from T2 traditional neighborhood to T3 traditional neighborhood and amending chapter 60 of the legislative code pertaining to the zoning map. The ordinance is laid over to March 3rd for a third reading public hearing. Item number 25, resolution public hearing 21-7, amending the financing and spending plan in the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $175,440.65 to utilize parkland dedication funds for the Westgate Park Creation Project.
All right, and this is a public hearing. We've taken testimony over the phone and by email. And as such, Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion?
Yeah, I wanted to just briefly speak to it too, if that's okay.
Ms. Jalali.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Parks Department for working with our office and the community on the Westgate Station project. This is going to be a really important new green space for families that is in an area that has added many new residents over the years and has a lot of mixed income housing all throughout the area of the city that it's in. And I also want to raise that community has reached out to our office, and we've had numerous talks about how to continue using parkland dedication fees to improve spaces in a part of the city in general that is formerly very industrial and is transitioning to heavily residential with some great, healthy local businesses mixed throughout the Raymond University corridor. And sometimes we look at park access as only geographically in the spread and not just in terms of the density of residents. And this is a part of the city that, as it grows, I would love to continue expanding park access throughout the areas that folks use. So I simply wanted to acknowledge those conversations. I am excited to advance this project today and appreciate folks' support.
Great. Any other comments? Roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 26, resolution public hearing 21-19, accepting a competitive equity grant from the Metropolitan Council, amending the financing and spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $154,255 for environmental services, exhibits, public art, and architect services for the Wakan Teepee Center project at the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, and entering into a grant agreement which includes an indemnification clause.
Right, on this item, we've is a public hearing. We've taken testimony electronically. So, as such, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I think you were on mute.
I think I unmuted, muted, and unmuted. Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 27, resolution public hearing 21-29, amending the financing and spending plans of the Department of Emergency Management for the 2020 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant.
This is a public hearing. We've taken testimony electronically. As such, Ms. Prince would move to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 28, resolution public hearing 21-33, authorizing police and emergency management departments to accept a grant in the amount of $783,119 from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, for the Port Security Grant Program.
All right, and this item is a public hearing. It's been taking testimony electronically. As such, Mr. Tolbert moves to close a public hearing and approve. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 29, Resolution Public Hearing 21-36, authorizing the city to accept $9,222,640 in federal emergency rental assistance funds, amend the 2021 budget to incorporate the funds, exercise the joint powers with City of Minneapolis, Dakota County, Hennepin County, and Ramsey County to carry out a multi-jurisdictional emergency rental assistance landlord application program, approve program guidelines, and execute the necessary agreements.
And on this item, we thought it would be helpful to have Ms. Shookman from PED just give us a quick summary of this, especially given the dollar figure that we're looking at and really the needs that it appears to be helping us meet. So I think Ms. Shookman is on the call, and we would welcome your summary of this item.
Thank you, Council President Brenmoen and other council members. Happy to be here today. We are requesting today authorization for the city to accept $9,222,640 in federal emergency rental assistance funds, approval of a budget action to amend the 2021 budget to incorporate the funds, and approval to enter into a joint powers agreement with Minneapolis, Dakota County, Hennepin, and Ramsey County to carry out a collaborative multi-jurisdictional rent assistance landlord application program, as well as to approve program guidelines. On December 27, 2020, there was a federal law passed that included $25 billion nationwide for assistance to renter households that have experienced or at risk of financial hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Minnesota's total initial allocation is $375 million, with 55% of that figure allocated directly to the state of Minnesota and 45% to local jurisdictions with populations at or above 200,000 people. So these local jurisdictions include the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul and the counties of Anoka, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, and Washington. On January 12th, 2021, the city certified to accept a direct allocation of the $9.22 million of funds from the Department of Treasury, and we've received the dollars. The state of Minnesota and all other eligible local jurisdictions have also certified to receive their funds directly. Staff seek approval to establish the program and will follow the specific requirements in the federal law that really govern how we use the resources. Eligible activities are really funding rent, utilities, and energy costs. 90% of the funds have to be used for those direct expenses, and up to 10% of the funds can be used for administrative expenses or housing stability services. Eligible recipients include renters, renter households with incomes at or below 80% of area median income who've experienced a financial hardship through COVID that has caused a risk of housing instability or homelessness. U.S. Treasury also requires that grantees prioritize households with incomes at or below 50% AMI and households where an individual has been unemployed for 90 days or longer. Payments can be made to households including arrears and future payments of up to 12 months with in some cases 15 months being allowable if funds are available and required to help a household maintain housing stability. The program is very much moving on a tight time frame, which we know that the need is significant in the community, and the Treasury Department is looking for funds to be obligated by grantees by September 30th of this year, and spent fully by the end of this year, December 31st. Staff is proposing to move these funds forward with really a dual-pronged approach, creating a landlord program across multiple jurisdictions, as well as a tenant program. We are really looking to leverage state infrastructure that's also being developed by Minnesota Housing for a centralized intake process and online application system where we could utilize common platforms for both our landlord and tenant program, and that they would be really the same programs used throughout the metro and the state, just to avoid confusion for our renters, and also hopefully to reduce administrative costs so that we can use our funds to support community partners that we know are going to be working with our renters. In terms of the metro-wide landlord program, we are looking to consolidate the administration of that program for efficiency, but also really to streamline that application process for landlords who have properties potentially in multiple jurisdictions, where they could come in and apply at one time for all of their units. Staff is proposing setting aside $5.5 million for the landlord program, and about $3.72 million for the tenant program. The tenant program would launch following the landlord program. We're working to launch the landlord program and also build the tenant program. And we are exploring the possibility of collaborating with Ramsey County on a joint tenant program where renters would apply directly through a network of community organizations that would work with tenants to get their application materials together, verify eligibility, and process applications. We know that a network of on-the-ground community partners is really critical to getting the word out across all of our communities. And so we're really looking to partner with community organizations on the tenant program. So I think with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I see Mr. Tao has a hand up.
Thank you, Council President. Director Schussman, can you clarify if a landlord has properties in St. Paul and he or she got grant for it, does that eliminate him or her from the property in Minneapolis? Can you clarify that?
Councilmember Tao, it would not eliminate landlord from receiving funds for a property in Minneapolis. So a landlord could apply on behalf of multiple tenants throughout multiple jurisdictions. Each jurisdiction's funds, though, would only be spent for tenants that reside within our jurisdictions.
Okay. And is there any priorities with smaller landlords, a duplex, fourplex versus someone who is 24plex or 50 units?
Councilmember Tao, we are in discussion with our other local partners about whether there's a priority there that makes sense versus sort of just getting those dollars out as quickly as possible. And so I think that's something we definitely are considering, but haven't made a determination yet about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with that said, I would with the margin, I would think that the smaller property owners would probably be hurt the most financially. So I hope that they'll go into your consideration.
Other questions? Mr. Tolbert.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I think this is a fantastic program that's really going to help people. Obviously it's in partnership with federal dollars, which we need and we're in a good position to allocate it. And I'm really glad, and I appreciate your leadership on this, Director Schuckman, of collaborating multi-jurisdictionally. I think that's really important to cut down on or make it more efficient so that more money can actually go to helping people who need the rental assistance. I think it is something, people are obviously struggling. We know that right now, and this will help people. So thank you for your leadership on this. And that this is my way of saying I will support it, and when appropriate, happy to make a motion for it too.
Thank you, Mr. Tolbert. And I'll just add that I did take an earlier briefing on this with Ms. Schuckman, and I really admire and appreciate the work around coordinating with other jurisdictions. Landlords who own properties in multiple areas don't much care about city boundaries. Residents who are looking for help don't much care about city boundaries, and just the ease of use is so important, and it's clearly a priority. And so I want to lift that up and just say how much I appreciate that, because so often participating in city programs can become more onerous than the value at the end of the day. So I think that's great, and I look forward to seeing this executed. It's a lot of money, and we need it, so it's great. Okay, so I heard a motion from Mr. Tolbert to close a public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 30, resolution public hearing 21-31, amending the 2021 budget by adding the 2019 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant.
All right, and this is a public hearing held online, and as such, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31, resolution public hearing 21-32, authorizing the police department to accept and amend the 2021 special fund budget for the 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant.
And this public hearing's been held online. As such, Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 32, resolution public hearing 21-37, amending the Public Works grant budget for a Department of Energy grant of $3,650,237.
And this public hearing has been held online. As such, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 33, resolution public hearing 21-38, amending the Public Works grant budget for a Department of Transportation grant of $4 million.
And this public hearing has been held online. As such, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 34, Ordinance 21-10, creating Chapter 223 of the Legislative Code relating to Guaranteed Income Program.
All right, and this is an ordinance public hearing. We did get a brief report from Mr. Karcher Ramos initially, but we asked if he could just come in and in front of this public hearing and give us a brief summary of that report. So welcome to the meeting. I know you're here.
Thank you, Council President. Can you hear me?
Yep, I sure can.
All right, great. Let me just pull up something here. Give me a moment. Has it popped up?
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Council President Brett Moen, council members, I'm here to just give a staff report on the Guaranteed Income Ordinance, Ordinance 21-10. As you recall, the mayor announced the People's Prosperity Pilot Guaranteed Income Program through executive order in September. This council approved the use of the CARES funding in September. Last month, you accepted the first installment of the private philanthropic funding, and that today we're here for the Guaranteed Income Ordinance third reading. Again, the program is an 18-month program lasting into the winter, spring of 2022. So the purpose of this ordinance in front of you is to transition the existing Guaranteed Income Program from executive order to an ordinance, which will authorize the program after a state of emergency ends for COVID-19. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for we get on the other side of this COVID portal before the program ends. So this again would authorize the program beyond a state of emergency. What it's not doing is not expanding the program to more participants. We are only serving the 150 who have already been enrolled. We're not asking the city to commit to any additional funding. We're going to be continuing to use committed funding there. Are you seeing my slides moving or no?
Nope, I just see the front one, which is fantastic.
I don't know why it's not advancing. Can you see it now?
Nope, it's just the same one. Sometimes we've had people, they have like two versions on their desktop, one that's static and I don't know.
I just pressed forward and it navigated forward. That was my bad, sorry.
Are you seeing anything now?
The first slide.
On mine, I can click
there,
forward. Okay,
there.
now it's moving.
Yep.
All right. There we go. For whatever reason, it wasn't advancing. Just as a reminder for the public, guaranteed income is a monthly cash payment given directly to individuals. It's unconditional with no strings attached and no work requirements. It's meant to supplement rather than replace the social safety net and can be a tool for advancing racial and gender equity. It's not a new idea. Martin Luther King, back in his 1968 book, proclaimed, "I'm now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by now a widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income." As a reminder, this is 150 families, $500 a month for 18 months, and then there will also the babies will receive $180 over the 18-month period. By the numbers right now, we do have 150 enrolled. We've made $421,000 in cash transfers, and $8,800 have been deposited in the child's college savings account. We're not doing this work alone. We have a circle of advisors that the mayor put together from the Kresge Foundation, the Center for Economic Inclusion, the Federal Reserve, University of Minnesota, the St. Paul Regional Labor Federation, the St. Paul Chamber of Commerce, and many other folks who you can kind of see on this slide. So this group gets together regularly sort of deliberates on, how the demonstration project is going, reflects on the data, thinks through some strategy. I know we didn't mention this group last presentation, so I thought we would today. One thing that we do want to highlight just around the public benefits is we did do the Economic Stability Indicator tool, which is a tool of the Children's Defense Fund that looks at the interactions between wages, work support, tax credits, tax liability, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what our benefits counselors used, and so that our families can make an informed decision about program participation and that sort of thing. They did sign off after the counseling to decide whether they would participate in the program or not. The other thing we have moving forward on benefits is an income and asset exclusion bill. This bill actually has been heard. We've been through one committee, and the bill effectively outlines the public programs where income and asset exclusions are needed based off an analysis that was conducted by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. And then the third thing that we've developed as we think about benefits is a hold harmless fund. We have $50,000 to mitigate any sort of potential loss of our reduction, in public benefits and that sort of thing that will, if that were to come to be needed, we have it there. This was something that we also used in the Stockton pilot, and it was rarely to never actually tapped into. We've been working with Ramsey County and the Minnesota Department of Human Services to make sure families won't be adversely impacted by those reimbursement payments. Last thing I'll highlight is just on the research front. I know there was inquiries around this last presentation, but we didn't have it at the time. So we are part of a national evaluation, which is being conducted by the Center for Guaranteed Income Research. It's a centralized 30-site evaluation, and we'll be looking at some of these key outcomes from income volatility, economic agency or choice, how the guaranteed income impacts financial situations of debt savings, wealth, as well as different health impacts, parenting, as well as engagement in college savings. Not going to go through all these questions, but these are broader questions that are being looked at in that national evaluation across all sites and sort of what they're trying to unearth there. Again, this is just for you all, but I'm not going to read through those one by one. At the end of the day, what we're really trying to do through a guaranteed income program is maintain the dignity and the choice, of individuals and for their families, our economy isn't working for everybody, and the intention is to provide that basic income floor that helps elevate folks so they can have greater economic agency, choice, and benefit their family. With all that said, that's my update for today.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from my colleagues on this item? I guess I don't have a question, but I just want to say, Mr. Carter Ramos, I am so grateful that you are here at the city doing this work. Your vision and leadership is so impressive. And when you come to present to us, I'm always like, where do we get this guy? Like, why is he so awesome? So thank you. And I really love that in addition to the impactful and meaningful work that is happening here, we are also part of a study to quantify the results here. So I just want to thank you for that. And I know there's a lot of support here. Mr. Tolbert, I believe, had, I see Mr. Tao has a hand up. And then I know Mr. Tolbert had a small amendment that he wanted to add before the end of the public hearing here today. So let's hear from Mr. Tao and then Mr. Tolbert.
Thank you, Council President. Just to answer your question there, Council President, Mr. Culture Ramos is from Ward 1, where all the people are. So this is for the record.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is a great program. I'm very excited about it. I think that we've always said that how we care for those among us that have the least really define us as a society. And so during COVID, during pandemic, where there's lots of big issues that we have to deal with, and poverty, giving a family an opportunity to put food on the table goes a very long way. I know we talk about the spikes of public safety issue that we have in our community, and this is one of the wanted a solution. And so, I'm really proud of this work of the full council, the administration, and I'm really excited about the outcome towards the end and looking at the data and how we could make this a national trend. So thank you for all your work, Monier.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. Mr. Tolbert.
I do have an amendment, but just a question for Mr. Karcher-Ramos. Is the hold harmless fund, does that need to be in the ordinance? Do we want to put that into the ordinance? I don't know if it is. I don't recall seeing it. I could have missed it.
Council President Brendan Moe and Councilmember Tolbert, it isn't in the ordinance. I guess that would be up to y'all's discretion, if you want to include it. It is part of the program component. And there's other program components that, around, narrative change and storytelling and that aren't in the ordinance either. But so I would leave it to y'all's discretion on what you think's best.
I think it would make sense. It's an important thing, and I wasn't aware of it until today. But I will make an amendment. I do have it in Legistar. It is version 2. And it probably shouldn't surprise anybody at this table that I'm bringing it. It doesn't affect the actual ordinance. It's put into the whereas clause, and it is directing staff and requiring staff to give notice to all participants of when the emergency orders end. And the reason that is important to me is the benefits that many families are getting, either state or federal or sometimes county benefits, are calculated based on income, and the emergency ordinances that at the state level are not necessarily making this assistance be counted as income. When the emergency ordinance ends, it could be counted as income, and I just want every participant to know full well that it could affect their other public assistance, whether that's a housing grant, a food support grant, child care grants, or whatever it may be. It may affect their other public assistance programs. And I think we should go that extra step to make sure people are aware when the emergency ordinance ends, because I suspect it's going to be very anticlimactic when the emergency ordinances end. They'll just end. I suspect many of us won't even realize that they end for the day of. It's not like when they go into effect. And so I think it's really important that we as a city proactively make sure that all recipients know of the potential effects that could happen once the emergency ordinance ends to their other public assistance grants, which in many cases could be a lot larger dollar amounts than this grant fund. So that's my amendment.
And essentially codifying the notification at the end of the program.
Correct, when the emergency orders end, yeah.
Okay. Any discussion on that amendment? Ms. Prince and then Ms. Jalali.
I support the amendment. I did just go in to take a look at it, and it refers to the program as the PPP, and I don't think that it is referred to as the People's Prosperity Pilot in the rest of the ordinance. It seems to refer to it as the Guaranteed Income Program. And the only reason I think that's concerning is just because as part of the emergency funding programs, there is a PPP, and I just don't want to create any confusion. So it seems like that amendment should be the guaranteed income. Is it GIP, or is that how it's referred to? Guaranteed Income Program. So that's a friendly amendment.
Mr. Tolbert.
I'm open to that amendment if the city, yeah. What would, maybe Ms. Tierney could advise what the right term there would be. I think we all are on the same page of what it should be. I thank you for catching that. Or Munir, if excuse me, Mr. Karcher-Ramos, if you have a suggestion.
Councilmember Tolbert, this is Rachel Tierney. I think it should be consistent language throughout. It's best to have the language consistent throughout rather than introduce a term that's not defined.
So are we calling it guaranteed income pilot in the rest of the ordinance? So we would change any place where it says PPP to guaranteed income pilot. That's the
Or guaranteed income program is in the title, so I would recommend that.
Guaranteed income program is the friendly amendment from Ms. Prince, which Mr. Tolbert accepted. Okay. Did you have more, Ms. Prince, or was that?
No, that's it.
Okay, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. I'm chiming in briefly to also support. I just wanted to highlight that I think one of the values behind this policy and this program is that working families know their needs and they know what is best for them with the things that they're trying to piece together that make up their annual income and the supports that they depend on. And I think that this ordinance amendment can be supported, one, because it doesn't impair our efforts as they are, and two, it just gives them more information to do that. And I just wanted to connect that value to just the concept of agency and how important that is as we're trying to support families the most in need in our city. So long-winded way of saying yes, and here's why, but I think it's important to highlight that value. Thank you.
Right, and just the perpetuating the idea of getting all the information while you make your decisions. Great. Other comments are comments on this amendment? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves the amendment. Roll call.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The amendment is approved and the ordinance is laid over to March 3rd for final adoption.
All right. So I will again look to my colleagues if there's other comments before we move to close the public hearing. I think because we don't have a chamber full of people, perhaps closing remarks should come at the fourth reading. I don't know. So I'm looking, I see no comments. So Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing. Roll call.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to March 3rd for final adoption.
Thank you very much. All right. I would move suspension of the rules. Roll call.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The rules are suspended. Resolution 21-304, adopting the Community First Public Safety City Council Fund Grant Awards.
Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I am really grateful for the chance to bring this item forward today. It's my understanding we'll first begin with a staff report from our staff, Claire Verbetten and Faiza Ahmed, who are representing the staff review committee that did the entire bulk of the work running the application and review process. So would love to pass it over to, I believe it's going to Claire Verbetten first to do brief introductions, and then we'll move from there. And also wanted to just ask council members in advance for some patience with technicalities. We're working to make sure 2 staffers can get through their presentation, and then that a third is helping with slides. And so we'll just move through this as best we can. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'll start us off. Claire Verbaten, she, her, hers, and the Equity and Inclusion Program Manager. And just want to thank you all for having me here today and for being a part of this process. I'm very grateful. I think we put together a really wonderful review team. I think this speaks to our values as a city, especially around co-creating with our community and with our residents And these grants are really about seeing and recognizing and supporting financially their leadership and their incredible work around keeping our community safe. Faiza, would you like to and start us off with the presentation?
Yes. Council President Bredmoen and council members, just wanted to start off with a thank you to all the members of the council and staff for all the work in helping out and putting together this process and understanding the importance of this work. I would start with personally saying that I attended a high school with majority East African population, where I can honestly say that having known members of the community there, having one-on-one meetings with us, and creating genuine connections and with us and our families to keep us on the right path 100% helped keep us, so many of us, out of trouble and where we are today. That is why funding organizations like these are super important to me, and I'm sure many of us here. Throughout this process, we also saw that there was a high demand for funding to keep this work going throughout the city, which I'm sure you are aware of today, so we will be discussing that. I'm going to start with a quick summary of the history of the Community Organization Partnership Program. Can we go to the next slide? Yes. The Community Organization Partnership Program funds, COP funds, have been a flexible resource throughout for the past decade or so. Previously, 3 organizations received a larger pool of grant dollars, about $250,000, and in addition, each ward office had less than $15,000 to award to qualified organizations at their own discretion. So with that, each ward office used different processes and to distribute these funds, in which the city attorney recommended that an oversight board to vote on the ward COP awards to create more transparency of the general process. In 2018, the council moved the 3 large grants out of the COP fund and instead allocated the $250,000 to the district councils. This meant that most district councils saw an increase in a more stable and annual funding source. With the remaining COP funds, the council created a new RFP process, which led to the creation of the Community First Public Safety Council Fund. Next, I'll give a quick overview of the Community First Public Safety Council Fund timeline. So in early January, the council president Bredmoen and council members vetted the application and agreed upon program guidelines. We also worked on translating all documents in Hmong, Spanish, and Somali, and created a landing page that included translated sections for any member of the community to apply. The application opened on January 28th and closed at midnight on February 10th. And then right after that, the next day, the independent staff review started. And once the applications closed, we numbered each application, inserted them into a randomizer, which we then gave each applicant to 2 members of the review committee to evaluate and discuss how each proposal fit the criteria approved by the city council members previously, including how the applicant would build upon existing community first public safety initiatives, what metrics the application would use to measure success, the organization's history of doing this work, and more. Which brings us to today, where we are presenting the review committee's recommendations. And then the next couple of weeks will include getting contracts sent and returned for the work to begin. So next, we're going to talk about the community response and what we received. The total amount of funding available was $100,000. Taking into consideration councilmember feedback led to the project team specifying a preference for a smaller $20,000 grants to ensure that as many organizations as possible could receive some council investment. In the end, we ended up receiving 22 applications from a diverse set of organizations serving nearly every area in St. Paul, with a particular focus on the most impacted communities and the neighborhoods they call home. Now I'll pass it on to Claire.
Thanks, Faiza. So I'll just read off the folks who are part of this review team, and recognizing that we had really great representation from multiple key stakeholders to ensure comprehensive analysis and discussion took place. So that involved Mai Chang Zhang from the Ward 1 office, Faiza Ahmed, of course, Executive Assistant in Ward 4 office, Wajan Kim in Ward 5, myself, Danny Givens, the Director of Transforming Systems Together in Ramsey County, Joel Franklin, the Director of Community Ambassadors, and Daniel Ying, Senior Policy Aide in the Mayor's Office. Again, I think a really great group of folks who brought both their lens through the work that they do, both at the city and the county and other spaces, and just their lived experience. And want to highlight that we had a review team of all people of color, which was really amazing to be a part of. You can move to the next slide. And so for this review process, we looked at every application closely per the criteria that multiple members of the review team are part of. And that criteria, of course, was informed by council and laid out in the application very clearly, looking at how the proposal would build upon existing community first public safety initiatives, how the proposal would measure success and impact, and the organization's track record of doing the work. So that was both laid out very clearly to applicants and also in the rubric that we were using as a review team. Yep, go ahead, move to the next slide. So based on our careful, individual review and in-depth group discussion, we're recommending that the following organizations each receive $20,000, and those are Love First, Release MN8, Karen Organization of Minnesota, the JK Movement, and Restoration Incorporated Ministries. I just want to highlight the great work that these folks are doing and share a little bit more about why they stood out to us. First and foremost, just like deep understanding of what community first public safety means and that track record of doing that work and being committed to working in community. I feel I could sense how deeply tied all these folks are to the communities that they're serving. Being able to speak to folks and have very culturally responsive responses to violence that are so needed, and understanding that there's not sort of a one size fits all for this response in St. Paul. They were all very focused on our youth and empowering our youth, setting up these circles for healing, for restoration. We talked a lot about restorative justice in the application process and saw that come out very clearly from all of these applicants. I just really appreciated their intention on addressing, root causes of violence, looking at, breaking cycles, addressing historical trauma, understanding poverty and how that plays into this, and really looking to educate folks, to empower folks, to give a really holistic review of how to support their community, and not just kind of seeing folks in pieces, but working with entire families and community members, just again very in tune with who they serve and who their neighbors are. I also would just highlight the areas that they will be doing this work in: Rondo, Frogtown, Midway, the East Side, Downtown, West Side, and North End. And again, those focus areas absolutely include gun violence prevention, domestic violence prevention. There was talk of addressing that as it shows up at hospitals, which was a really unique approach. Restorative justice, of course, healing and trauma, and mental health. Just so impressed again by these applications. It was really tough to make this decision and to nail it down to 5. There was such an overwhelming, response to this application. And I think, again, it just speaks to the fact that there are folks who are doing this work, whether we support them or not. But it is great to give that financial support to these organizations, especially those who are really grassroots on the ground getting started. And I know that those funds will go a long way. So I will stop there. And again, just thank you for this opportunity, and just really appreciative to these organizations for their work.
Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Claire, and for this incredible work that you are doing. I'm just curious for get it. Is there like a what do you call it, like a round robin type, where if those that receive fund this year, next year they would move up, kind of like how we do our QAP, or are we planning to fund organization that gets it every year, right? So that's my first question. And then the other one is, one of the things that we saw during this pandemic is the increase in domestic violence. And so I'm just curious, those organizations that has been awarded, which of those are also working on domestic violence?
Mr. Tao, I'll take the first question, just in terms of what's the plan going forward, and just to, this is the first time that we've done this fund in this manner with the RFP, and as in collaboration with the council, with the shared priority of being community first public safety for the awards. I think that we've discussed, when we come around to budget time and make decisions about what's next year, I think that we can have that conversation really at that time. Do we want to continue prioritizing community first public safety programs? Do we want to double down on the groups that did work and had great results? Do we want to maybe do 2 $50,000 grants and do like more money behind something? And I think that we will really, because this is our fund and because it's something that's that we're designing kind of as we go, that will be up to us to determine. I don't think that the application gave any indication that it would be a list that would stay active over the course of a year. So people who submitted a strong application, if we did choose to go forward in a similar vein, would be probably encouraged to reapply. But we do get to define that ourselves as it's our fund. And then I think Ms. Jalali had a response on the second piece of that, or I'm looking at you, Ms. Jalali, yes?
The second question was about how the organizations are doing work to address domestic violence, and I actually thought our staffers between Claire and Wajang would be able to field that.
Yep,
I think I'm understanding correctly. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. Councilmember Tao and Council President Bredmoen, of the 5 applications before you, 3 have named domestic violence as a focus of their work, namely Release MN8, KOM, and Restoration Incorporated Ministries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for on the review committee, or Ms. Prince?
Yeah, I want to thank the selection committee, congratulate Ms. Ahmed on her great work as an intern, and I really appreciate the work of the committee. I did happen to notice that one of the descriptions for one of the groups includes using the funds for marketing and branding. And I would ask if we could go back and just, I don't see any opportunity for that use in the criteria that we set up for the program. And I just feel like what we were aiming for here is direct services. And so I would hope that maybe there's another way that that group could fund that need. The other thing I want to say is that, you know, what we all knew was that when we encouraged various groups to apply, that not all of them would be funded. But one thing that we did talk about before the process started was that for groups that ranked highly and we were not able to fund, that we would we might have the option of being able to reach out to philanthropy and other ways to fund those efforts. And I would definitely support that. I'm happy to reach out to the Eastside Funders Group. I think there have been a number of funds that have been set up since the civil unrest last year to work on violence and violence intervention and racial justice issues. So I think it would really be worthwhile for us to look into trying to find funds for some of the other programs. And then finally, I was in a meeting just today where one of my business owners in Ward 7 really wants to do some kind of a program with young people who are at loose ends in our community to provide a meal, bring in speakers, connect with the kids and let them know how welcome they are in our community and so forth. And so I'd love to be able to reach out to one or more of these groups to assist that business owner with that effort. So if we could get contact information to work with the organizations, that would be great. And I don't know what we've planned in terms of measuring the success of the programs. I think that it's tough in a one-year effort to set up metrics and measurements. So, but I would say that, and I appreciate what you said, Council President Brenmoen, about going forward. I think that we have the opportunity to look at different ways to configure this effort and to use these funds. So, so I would hope that we could remain kind of flexible about how we establish the program in coming years. But I am so grateful to the work of the group and that we are at this point of sending forward 5 groups with an amount of money that will allow them to have an impact in our communities at this really difficult time.
Thank you very much. And I'm noting that staff are taking notes and making sure that we follow up on, you know, being sure that the scope of the RFP is what is reflected in the work that is ultimately done. And so I appreciate those comments. There's some of, I appreciate getting that information on the record, especially as we are in really, like I said earlier, this is the first time we've done this, and really for a first-time program, it feels pretty tight. And but at the same time, being flexible and open to changing it, improving it is important. So I appreciate that very much. I have Nelsie and Rebecca.
Thanks. I do want to say thank you to council members Tao, Brenmo, Jalali, all your hard work for leading this effort. Like even before the RFQ process here, like you 3 were on the Community First Public Safety Committee already and driving that work. So thank you to you and also other committee members who helped make this a super seamless process as well, along to all the different organizations who applied. I feel like we, just like from the briefing I got and the presentation, like we do have a really strong list that's in front of us. It sounds like in terms of scoring, these are the 5 that like really there's like just a huge difference in scoring between them and other groups, and that's why they really stood out, and they're the top 5 finalists. And I think that just really shows the, like the deep grounding and clarity that they have and the work they want to bring into the city of St. Paul, and also like the grounding that our committee members have as well, and what we would all like to see collectively. The one thing I wanted to mention is when I was in a briefing recently, a specific ask that I had made was to see like some sort of short blurb about what each organization, especially the top 5, like what their work was, like, basically what's the big bucket of work that they're going to be in charge of, and what's the demographics as well on the different spaces in St. Paul that they'll be touching. Is it like the East Side, Midway, Hamlin area? And I didn't see that. So I was wondering if we can have the staff go through that. I'm not sure if there was like more to the presentation or not, but I wanted to point that out.
Yep, I'm happy to try to attempt to field that. Councilmember Yang, can you just reiterate, are you looking for a general breakdown of neighborhood coverage in terms of the applications that we received?
Yeah, yep. For now, just like the top 5 that we see in front of us, like what's the demographics, of the area that they'll be covering, and then also like what work are they focusing on? Is it gun violence prevention? Like you mentioned, some are focused on domestic violence. I'd love to know all of that, especially because after we vote, we're going to be seeing some of them out in the community. and so I'd love to figure out like who's going to be where.
Yes, and I'm happy to answer that. I'm thinking about how to present that information to you. So I think what I'm going to do is attempt to describe the information across kind of the tenets of work versus by organization. That might be easier. So there were 3 organizations that identified Rondo as a neighborhood of focus. That was Release MN8, the JK Movement, Restoration Incorporated Ministries. There were 4 that identified Frogtown as a neighborhood of focus, and particularly named Release MN8, KOM, and Restoration named Frogtown in their application. The JK Movement is serving that neighborhood. Midway, there was Release MN8, JK Movement, Restoration Incorporated. East Side, there were 3 organizations that specifically named the East Side in their application. That's Release MN8, KOM, Restoration Incorporated, and the JK Movement. Named them generally. Downtown, it's the same, Release MN8, JK Movement, Restoration Incorporated Ministries. West Side, same thing, Release MN8, JK Movement, Restoration Incorporated Ministries. The North End had Love First, Release MN8, KOM, JK Movement, Restoration Incorporated Ministries. And those were the neighborhoods we identified just generally in the application as well. In terms of gun violence or domestic violence, Love First focuses on gun violence. Release MN8 named gun violence and domestic violence. KOM stated domestic violence. JK Movement, gun violence. Restoration Incorporated Ministries offered up gun violence and domestic violence. They all identified youth as a focus of their work. Everyone but JK Movement had named restorative justice in their application. That's not saying there aren't aspects to their application that covers that work. 3 of them, Restoration Incorporated, Release MN8, and Love First, have aspects of community healing. All but Restoration Incorporated Ministries named trauma as an aspect, although I would say that might be an unfair articulation of Restoration Incorporated, their application, because I do believe they have aspects of that in their work, since they are very closely tied to organizations like Healing Streets that we know do trauma work. And then Release MN8 and the JK Movement were 2 that had explicitly named mental health as an aspect of their work. And lastly, we had 3 with special focuses, granted not the entirety of their program delivery services, but Release MN8 was very unique. They had chosen to apply with a focus on families that had been impacted by ICE, either a family member themselves who had faced deportation and reintegration to their family, and it also specifically called out the Southeast Asian community. KOM specifically named mental health and also substance abuse. The JK movement also was very unique. They had provided a proposal that included a 1-year-long program, which could be altered based on the amount of funding they would receive. But those were ones that were unique or had unique methodologies.
And I believe that the summaries were emailed to council members today. So if they should be in your inbox. If not, we'll make sure that gets sent. But I would just also request that we get summaries posted on the website that was used for applications so that people want to go and read about these outside of this meeting, they can do that as well. And I think that we have those summaries. It shouldn't be a big lift to get those on there. And then everyone can see.
Not at all, and excuse me for interrupting. Just last